AccountantsWorld, and I'm very happy to be doing this webinar for you this afternoon. As Roger said, he will be manning the chat for me during the course of the webinar, so if you have questions, you can put the questions in and he'll answer many of your questions as possible. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll have time to do sort of an open session. So with that being said, let's get started. So basically, what I want to start is just going over the webinar outline. And there's 6 different topics that we're going to touch on today while we're doing this webinar, okay? The first one is going to be our compliance setup, which is going to consist of payments and forms and adding a new state. Then we're going to go over e-services, the setup, the guidelines, okay? Compliance, which is going to be processes and controls. Then we're going to talk about managing payroll compliance, e-filing, forms, taxes for all of your clients. Then we're going to talk about communications and backups. And then we're going to look at some of the training and the resources that are available to you and your staff to make sure that your compliance month goes as smoothly as possible. So for the first part of today's session, we're going to talk about compliance setup, and that's going to consist of tax deposit frequency, account numbers, forms, auto e-filing, manual versus e-filing, new states, and items to consider. Okay, so to start off with, tax payments are scheduled based on an employer's tax deposit frequency, which is issued by your taxing authority. Okay, it's imperative that the setup is correct from the very beginning and evaluated every year at year end. We have seen some cases where employers have been penalized for not using the proper tax deposit frequency. So you want to make sure that you do have the proper frequency in here. And another critical area is identification numbers. Okay. Also on this note that if an unemployment rate changes during the quarter, which is very common in the first quarter for almost all of the states, that form will be recalculated for the entire quarter's liability based on the taxable wages and the rate at the time of the form. Okay. Once you've entered your tax ID numbers in here, it's going to flow down to the e-services tax screen, which you're going to see here. And we're going to see a few things are a little bit changed. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Many states do use the same withholding and unemployment identification number for electronic purposes, but should a state require a different EFT ID number, you're simply going to click on any one of these state lines here, and that's going to give you access to information here where you can enter another ID number. Okay, so one thing I do want to mention that it's very important that you not use a bogus ID number if the employer doesn't have an ID number or they haven't applied for one yet. The ID numbers are critical to the proper posting of the client's compliance payments and forms. Okay, if you're using an incorrect ID number or a made-up ID number, it's a good possibility that those funds are going to sit in the suspense account until they're identified as to who they belong with, okay? A couple of things I'm sure some of you have noticed is that we've recently redesigned the tax e-services tax screen. So now the setting up of the electronic fund services requires minimal intervention on your part, if anything at all. You no longer have to access each client and manually enable the electronic fund services. It's automatically going to happen for you. And additionally, you're going to see now that the new screen actually shows what e-services are supported for each state. So in this example here, we're going to have withholding EFT. You're going to see here it's telling you that yes, it's supported. UI, it's supported, but no, not here. And then you also telling you here the e-filing, whether it's supported for also withholding in the UI, okay? So the auto e-file feature automatically is going to e-file all the applicable forms without any exceptions. If you do not wish to have them electronically filed, you do have the option to deselect this. You would need to go into e-services under preferences, and then you can deselect that, okay? So, and a note also to mention on this is that as of today, Payroll Relief supports 74% of the states for electronic filing and 90% for state electronic fund transfers, which is great. So this change keeps in line with our promise to you that Payroll Relief offers efficiency and productivity to your payroll practice. Okay. So compliance forms, and what we're looking here is at our preferences screen. And there's a couple of things here that I would like to point out to you, all right? The first one is if your client has an overpayment for a tax, the system default for the first 3 quarters is to apply that overpayment to the next quarter. If you would prefer to force a refund instead for your client, under here, you would click here, force a refund on the quarterly forms. The print tax agency check allows you the option to print a check through Payroll Relief for any manual tax payments that you may need to make. And that option would be here. And lastly, the FUTA tax is only due, as we all know, is only due when it exceeds $500 for the year, which in most cases is not paid until the end of the year. If you want the FUTA tax for your clients paid every quarter, you simply need to just check this box and those payments will be made. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about compliance and e-services, okay? The auto e-file process starts around the 16th of the compliance month, or in other words, after the last monthly payment is processed, okay? So in the beginning of the month, you're going to receive an auto email reminder from us to, it's going to prompt you to review all of your clients' records, okay? Immediately after the third monthly payment is processed, which is usually around the 15th, the 16th, to the 17th, the e-file function is going to run daily until all forms have been e-filed, which is usually around the 25th of the month, okay? In most cases, it's imperative that you advise your clients ahead of time that amounts could be debited from their account if there are payments that are due with the forms any time after the 15th of the month, okay? You will be, if there are any rejections, you will be notified email, and then you want to make sure you take a look at those issues promptly and manually refile any forms that need to be filed. We're going to take a look at that later where you manage that, but we strongly recommend that you use this tool on a daily basis to manage your compliance and to be on top of anything that may have been rejected. Another preference is called pre-funding, and that's employers that wish to be debited for payroll taxes on the pay date. They may opt to use pre-funding, okay? So when you use pre-funding, which would be checking this box right here, what it's going to come up here is this here that's going to say to you, AccountantsWorld is authorized to debit payroll taxes on the pay date for any payroll, regardless of the due date for the tax. The debited taxes can only be credited to the appropriate taxing authority, and no refunds can be made to the employer. You further agree that all necessary funds will be available in the employer's account the day before the pay date, and this is the day that the ACH transaction is initiated. And just a few things to note, too, that only tax payments that can be made via EFT will be pre-funded, okay? So you would need to have the use pre-funding box checked in order for that to happen. And something also to be mindful of as well is if you turn on the pre-funding option, say in the middle of the month, and your your client is a monthly filer. So let's say you have a client who processes a weekly payroll, and the first 2 weeks of the month, we weren't using pre-funding. The third week of the month, you have the pre-funding option turned on. With that particular payroll, it is also going to collect the outstanding liabilities for the first 2 payrolls, unless they're marked in the system that they have already been paid. So that's just something to be mindful of. Okay. Okay. When you're adding a new state to your client, there's some things that you need to consider. Okay. The tax deposit and frequency, if applicable. The state tax account numbers for both withholding and unemployment. The state unemployment rate and the effective dates. And any other employer taxes. Some states have supplemental UI rates or a SDI rate, which is a disability rate. Has your employer registered as a new employer in that state? Registration forms are available from the e-services tax screen or under the resources tab for employer forms. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the e-services and the setup. And this follows a very specific process. We're going to talk about the reporting agent, setting up the Form 8655, your bank validation, the ACH application, processes and controls, and how to avoid non-sufficient funds. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is you want to make sure that under the firm administration and the firm options that you have your reporting agent information entered into the system here, okay? AccountantsWorld is a third-party transmitter of electronic payment transactions. You are the reporting agent for your clients. So in firm administration, under reporting agent, you want to make sure that this information is entered in here. The contact name, the reporting agent PIN, the EFIN number, and the fax number. The fax number is very important because this is what the IRS is going to use to communicate with you on any 8655 related matters. Okay, and once this is set up there, it's there for all of your clients. You only have to do that once. So the process we're going to talk a little bit about today is the ACH application and the 8655, which is the most important process in this step. We're going to talk about completing all the fields in the application, printing it to or emailing it to your client for a signature, and then scanning and uploading the documents. We're also going to talk about bank validation and how you go about obtaining the amount and enter the bank validation information in the screen. And then we're going to be talking about enabling the e-services, et cetera. And one thing I do want to mention here, and we're going to talk about this in a minute when we go through the screens, is that you cannot upload your ACH application until the bank validation has been completed. Okay? So let's move forward. So what we're looking at here now, we're in e-services and we're in manage documents. So what you're seeing here is an upload to upload the 8655 and an application for an EFT. So you want to make sure that you access each document from its respective screen, print or email it to the client, have them sign and date it, and then either you or the client can scan the document back and use the upload feature here. Okay? The ACH application gets loaded to AW, which is AccountantsWorld, for approval. The 8655 gets uploaded to your Cloud Cabinets firm folder. And the upload button for the ACH application will be disabled until you complete the bank validation process. So even though we're talking about the 8655 and the ACH application first, it's imperative that you do the bank validation because you will not be able to submit your application for EFT until you confirm your bank account. And if all of this is done correctly, the entire process shouldn't take any more than 4 to 5 banking days. Okay. So let's talk about the 8655. It is required to be submitted to the IRS for every employer to enable electronic services and payroll relief. Okay. Again, as I mentioned, the AccountantsWorld operates solely as a third-party transmitter of electronic tax returns. You as the client's accounting firm or payroll processing provider are the reporting agent. So the first thing you need to do is to submit the 8655. Now, if you already have an EFIN, you simply need to apply for a reporting agent role. If you do not have an EFIN, you need to request one and submit an 8655 to trigger the RA roll request. The IRS website has more information on this that can help you with that. This is the Upload 8655 screen, which allows you to view, print and or email to the client, upload and submit directly to the IRS. On the left side of the screen, you're going to notice here that it gives you a step-by-step process, okay? So what we're looking at here is just the screen. The status is telling us there's no document on record, okay? By clicking the view, it'll bring up the 8655 where you can email it directly to your client. And again, it requires a signature, okay? You can mark that it's been sent to the client, okay? Once you have sent it to the client and you make that change in the system that it's been sent, now you're going to notice here that your status has been changed to sent to the client. Okay. And it's also changed the reporting agent to the firm, which is you. Okay. Once you get the form back from your client with the proper signatures and you've scanned the document, you're ready to upload it. Okay, so you're going to select upload. You're going to check this box if you're already a authorized reporting agent for this employer. And you're going to select the form that you're uploading. In this form, we're working on an 8655. Now you're going to notice your status here is changed to uploaded. If once you've reviewed it, it'll change that to review or to incomplete. And once that process is done, you're going to be able to see here now that you have the option to submit this directly to the IRS. The button is available for you to submit it. Okay? You just submit it, and it's on its way. Okay. Once you've done that, now you're going to notice that your status has been changed to processed. Okay, you've uploaded the form, it's been reviewed, and you've submitted it to the IRS, so now it is in the process stage. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is how you manage the 8655, so you know where you're at with each one of your clients. So in the Payroll Center, we have an option called Manage an 8655, and this is new. So you're going to see here, all of your clients are going to be listed here. And you're going to be able to see exactly what the status is. Okay, so we see our first one here. This one's incomplete. This is processed. This one's been sent to the client. You're waiting on them. This one's been processed, received, etc. So this is going to be a great screen for you to be able to manage the process of the 8655, know exactly where you are with your clients, and who you're waiting on to get the information back to you. Okay. The second step in compliance in e-services is validating your bank account. So you must validate the bank account prior to completing the application for ACH. So the primary account, which we're showing here, is used for all EFT payments. That would be your direct deposit, it's your child support, billing, taxes. This account must be validated. So it's a very simple process. You simply put in your routing and transit number, the account number, the bank name, whatever type of account it is. It's a checking account or a savings account. Once you enter all this information, this button down here that says Save is going to become a dark blue. It's a little confusing. You don't want to click this button. What you want to click is Submit, because this is submitting the information. It's going to tell you here that the account is going to be debited for anywhere from a penny to $1 to validate this information. And at this point, you want to make sure you communicate with your client to look for this amount, because you're going to need that amount to go back in here and validate the bank account. Okay? Once you get that amount back, you would then click the Validate option, enter in the debit amount from the client's bank account, and that's going to validate the bank account. And then you can move on to the ACH application process. Now, let's just talk about this. You do have the option of setting up a separate bank for tax payments only, or if you're only using EFT payments transactions for tax payments or just wish to have tax payments from a different account, you can use this one. This account does not need to be validated. It's really just the first account that needs to be validated. And again, a very important step, because until the bank account is validated, you cannot move on to the ACH application. So the ACH application here, there are two, for your convenience, there are two links up at the top right of the screen that are going to explain the entire process to you, excuse me, in detail. Reading these documents is very important for any staff member that's going to be working with Payroll Relief. Please take the time to read them. It's important that you and your staff, and if applicable, your client, understands how the e-service process works, okay? Now, the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS, is the standard used by federal statistical agencies in classifying business establishments. Most recently, due to national security concerns, banks are a lot more scrupulous and now also use the NAICS codes to classify the businesses. So new on this screen, you're going to see the link, and it is required, and you can also search for the codes here. Okay, it's also very important that you pay attention to the screen text and instructions throughout the program. Here, for example, we have included suggested guidelines for risk management. Okay, whoops, let's back that up. Sorry about that. Down here on the bottom. You know, we all, in today's world, we all need to exercise a little bit more due diligence with regard to whom we conduct our business with. Okay, so just some compliance and e-services frequently asked questions. Okay, why is the bank validation required in order to upload the ACH application? Well, for efficiency, applications uploaded, processing started, and bank never validated. For security, the client can process a direct deposit payroll using invalid or bogus account numbers. So that's why we need to make sure that that's done first. Okay. Why are some tax payments paid electronically 3 banking days before the due date when all over the system it's stated that 4 banking days are required? Well, it's a courtesy. There's no guarantee that tax payments will be processed via EFT. I have auto e-filed enabled, yet my tax form was not auto e-filed. Why? Well, you need to check the exceptions report, the pending payments, or is any information missing or incorrect? And I need to unfile an electronically filed form. Why can't I? Unfortunately, we can't do that. They use the analogy here of like dropping some mail in a mailbox. Once it's in there, you can't get it out. Okay, another one, my client's unemployment rate changed and they're using pre-funding. What's going to happen with excess or deficit? The excess is going to be refunded to your client, and deficit will be debited at the time of filing. Why does the pending payment for the unemployment form show a different amount than what was actually due on the form? In many cases, the reason for that is a change in the unemployment rate during the quarter, or possibly a prior quarter adjustment was entered in the system. The debit says 4 banking days before the due date. Why was my client debited earlier? If the coupon payment was requested to pay early, if the form is filed earlier. All right, and no tax forms are not scheduled for my client. Why? It's possible they had no payrolls for the current year. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about NSFs, we urge you to only take fiscally responsible clients. Non-sufficient funds are the number 2 problem that we see in e-service, other than bogus account numbers, which is the number 1 problem. So taxes, direct deposit, client billing, banking validations, these are all labor and intensive and an inconvenience to you, your client, and to us. Okay. So compliance, processing, and control. So what we're going to talk a little bit about here is monitoring tax payments, manual versus electronic funds transfer, some special payment options when you might use these things, and then tax form filing. Okay. So this is the employer dashboard. It has I'm sure you're all familiar with the fact that it has a dashboard, a pane, for taxes due through the end of the quarter. Please take note of the text at the bottom of the pane. If it's filed early, it'll be debited on the date filed. This applies to both tax payments or forms filed early. And we're going to talk a little bit more on the employer dashboard and some enhancements later. This is the monitoring your tax payments screen. So what we're looking at here is we're in compliance and we're under payments. So the pending payment screen shows in the last column how your payments are going to be made. Okay, if it's scheduled to be paid EFT, or this here, if it's selected to record only. And basically what this is going to allow you to do, it will allow you to print and record a check directly from Payroll Relief, as long as you have that option checked in the compliance under preferences that we looked at a few screens ago. It says print tax agency checks. Okay, so special payment options, when you would use something like this, okay? Payroll Relief provides you many options to manage your tax payments. So let's take a look at these in the next two slides. So it allows you the option to schedule an additional payment to be processed via EFT. Check the appropriate box, and you will be presented with a grid to enter the details of your payment. So you're going to see federal, the tax type, the period, the settlement date, etc. For manual payments, you're going to have the ability to change the payment amount. You'll see this option here. You also may select to pay electronic payments earlier than their normal due date. You would select the payment and enter and either check the box to debit now, which will process the payment with the same day and credit the amount 4 banking days later, or check the box to change the settlement date, which will present you with an entry field for the date. And it must be 4 banking days in the future if you're changing the settlement date. Okay. And lastly, on this half of the screen, if the employer is using pre-funding, there is an option, please release pre-funded payments early. Okay. The next part of the screen, it looks at to disable an EFT payment for a particular payment if needed, to delete a payment if you needed to delete a payment, and the last option would be to change the form payment to a coupon payment. Okay, so what this is basically doing is it's changing it from to pay with the form to make a payment with a coupon rather than with a form. An example of this is filing your 941 at the end of the year when the FUTA, if the FUTA at the end of the year is over $500, the IRS will not accept the payment with the form. So you would want to change this here to pay with the coupon ahead of time, and then the 940 would be filed with no balance due. Okay, so the last thing that's very important, so you're going to check all these things, you make any of the changes in here that you want to as far as special payments are concerned, and all of that's great, but unless you check process payments, nothing's going to happen. Okay? All right. So processing an action that is also strongly discouraged is the continual on practice for certain e-services, specifically EFTPS and EFT payments. Okay, some special payment options are provided in Payroll Relief, are meant as a tool for you to manage these unique situations. these actions may still represent late payment penalties and interest. Okay, so this is really just kind of a flow chart on a form filed with a balance due, whether it's filed on paper, if they're not using EFT services, or filed with a paper due. So we just kind of go through this once. One is a manual process, no e-services, or a fully electronic process. So you have a tax form with a balance due. Is it on e-file or is it on paper? If it's e-filed, the balance goes with the form, and the form is e-filed with the payment. Okay, balance with the form, or is the balance with the form? No. Are we using EFT? Yes. Then the pending payment is scheduled when the form is recorded as filed. If you're not using EFT, tax agency checks. Are we using tax agency checks? No. Then the payment is recorded when the form is filed. It's a little confusing, this flow chart. A little confusing to me. So, all right. So, ACH debit versus an ACH credit. The ACH debit, the system sends the bank information entered in the system to this. Excuse me. Let me start again. The system sends bank information entered in the system to the taxing agency. The taxing agency directly debits the employer's bank account. The debit date is at the taxing agency's discretion. With the ACH credit method, the system debits the bank account entered in the system. The funds are placed in the fiduciary account until they're cleared. Then the system sends the credit to the taxing agency with the due date as a settlement date if it has not been requested to pay earlier. So let's take a look at some compliance forms filed with overpayments. So what we're looking at here is a 941 for the second quarter that has a $119 overpayment. Okay, so in the first 3 quarters of the year, Payroll Relief is going to apply any overpayment to the next quarter. Okay. Very important to remember, once the form is recorded as filed, then the system will apply the overpayment to any future liabilities. Until the form is recorded as filed, it's not going to do that. So once the 941 has been recorded as filed, then we can look at the details of the semi-weekly federal tax payment for the effective date of July 8th. And you can see here that the overpayment has automatically been applied to the July 15th due date, and it will reduce that payment. Okay. All right. So on your compliance tax form screen, the system is going to warn you if some payments have not been recorded for this payroll. Okay. So you can select any of the forms. You can select them individually, etc. Some of the reasons for this would be perhaps the 8655 has not been approved for your payments. If that would be the case, the e-file button will be disabled. Okay. We currently support e-filing for approximately 45 states. If you select e-file and a form cannot be electronically filed, the system will give you an error and the form will not be marked as e-filed. Okay. Again, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, that we strongly recommend that you treat the 16th of the month if using auto e-file, or the 23rd to the 25th, depending on the month, as the deadline for all the forms. So why wait until the last minute and run the risk of forgetting or missing the cutoff? And then you would be facing late filing penalties and interest. Okay. A prior period adjustment on a tax form. What we're looking at here is a New York State 45. They have the option on the New York State 45. Some have separate lines for overpayments or underpayments. That's the case here with the New York State 45. So you're going to see here, line 6, it's underpaid. Line 8 would be if it's been overpaid. Okay? So if you go into compliance, under your tax forms, you would select your New York State 45, and then this box is going to come up here where you can either adjust, put in your adjustment, okay? And then you also have the option here to put in notes, what the underpayment how the underpayment resulted, the overpayment, etc. You do have the option also to unfile if you want to on this form. And then now if you go back and look at your New York State 45, you're going to see that the previously underpaid amount is listed here on line 6. Okay, so let's talk about managing your payroll compliance. A few things we're going to talk about is the e-filing, exceptions, bypassed, rejections, due and past due forms, managing tax liabilities, and your federal tax depositing frequency. So managing your payroll compliance can be quite cumbersome, and this is why Payroll Relief is the only program in the market that provides you with the tools for managing and analyzing your payroll compliance at the firm level or the service bureau level. Make certain to have, at a high level, a documented process to use these tools as controls in the compliance area. You are most likely familiar with these, however, it is important enough to quickly review. Okay, so what we're taking a look at here is our payroll center and our manage compliance reports. Okay, so we're going to look at the first 3 tabs first, which is your exceptions, your unsuccessful e-files, and your rejected e-files. Okay, so we're on the exceptions now, and it's telling you what exceptions we have here. And it's going to give you the client, the name of the form, and very specific information is what the exception is. So let's just take a look right here at this Renato testing client. The employer form 8655 has not been processed. The employer bank has not been pre-noted, and the employer contact title is missing. So this is something that could be caught under that Manage My 8655 before we got to this point. So I just wanted to point that out because it is looking at some of the things that we just went over as very important steps in this process. Okay. Unsuccessful e-files. Later in the month, after the auto e-file is run, you want to take a look at the unsuccessful e-files. This screen is going to show you which forms were not able to be automatically e-filed, and you're also going to receive an email with this information. So you want to correct any errors here and then manually e-file again, okay? So this is telling you here for the New York State 45, your employer contact title is missing, okay? Rejected e-files, these are the ones that are returned by your taxing agency. So these are the ones that you should be monitoring on a monthly basis just to make sure that you have all of these corrected and ready to go when it comes to the compliance month. Okay, so the next 2 tabs, which is your forms due and your past due forms, okay, are associated with forms. So you're going to see here the different forms, forms that need to be filed, the period ending date, and the due date of these particular forms, okay? Past due forms, hopefully you won't have any of these, but some things that may cause these types of issues could be last-minute rejects or that it forgot to file it. Okay. Managing your compliance tax payments. Again, we're still in the payroll center and you're on your manage compliance report screen. It provides you with a specific range of pay dates all the liabilities and payments for federal, state, and local if applicable for all of your employers. This is not just one client. This is all of your employers, okay? So you can go in here and see this information at any time. The federal look back, this should be reviewed at the end of the year or in January. It provides the quarterly liabilities for all or a specific employer. It also provides the total tax liability and the current tax deposit frequency. So once your client has been processing in payroll relief for a full year of the look back period, the system is automatically going to calculate the look back for them and determine what their tax frequency is going forward. Okay, so communications and backups, some great information in here, and some good reminders of things to do that'll make your life a little bit easier. Okay, so the first one is client notifications, and this is a great option that's available under your firm administration, and it allows you to send an email blast to all of your clients at one time or just a select few clients by either checking this box or selecting which clients that you want to send an option to, okay? We have canned emails in here for you, or you can create your own custom email to send to your client. So let's look at the quarterly compliance report. All right, so the quarterly compliance report, and this is what the body of the email is going to look like going to your client. So to help you keep your records up to date, attached are your quarterly compliance report for the recently ended quarter. If we can be of further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact our office. And then you can send this to all of your clients all at one time. This makes it very easy. Okay. This screen here is your compliance email reminder under your firm options, okay? You have your payroll due reminders and your tax due reminders. So you want to make sure tax due to the client, tax due, forms due to the firm, okay? It's also recommended that you enter a secure password for the person who is receiving these forms. You would set that password up in the employer preferences screen. So it's recommended that you do that. Okay. Okay, so the last major topic we're really going to talk about is the importance of backing up your client's compliant forms and reports, okay? Regardless of whether your firm owns our cloud-based cloud cabinet application, you can archive forms and payroll report sets for each of your clients. The payroll report set gets automatically archived after checks have been printed for each payroll, and all compliance forms may be archived after each quarter's compliance month. So what they're showing you here is this is the path for where it will go into the cloud cabinet. Okay, so from this screen here, which is your batch processing and archive your forms, you can archive all filed compliance forms simply by clicking. You want to select your period, which would be this we're showing you here is the first quarter. And then you simply would select the clients that you want to archive. And then you hit the archive button and you're done. Then this process will also email a password in a protected zip file to your client to let them know that the forms are available to them, okay? You also have the option to batch archive all of your filed W-2s. Okay, tax forms, you have the same option here. Compliance under your tax forms, you can archive all of the forms from this screen. And then archiving reports. So under the reports, what we're looking at here is the compliance reports, and you can archive all of these directly from this screen, okay? Or use a report set to archive your compliance reports. This is a great idea because what you can do is you can build your own report set of forms, tax compliance forms that you want to archive. You can see here we've chosen tax liabilities and payments, federal taxes, state taxes, and pending payments. And then with this report set, you can archive all of the forms. And just as a suggestion, if you choose this option, you want to make sure that you're consistent across all of your clients, so that if you're going to be using this report set to archive your compliance reports, you want to make sure that you're consistently archiving all of the reports for the same clients. Yes. Okay. Data backup. This is here your ACH transaction screen. This again is under the e-services menu, and it's strongly recommended to all users of electronic fund transactions to archive this information for a complete record of all ACH transactions. Okay. The screen does offer various filtering, so you can filter for the type, child support or direct deposit or a tax payment, whatever it is that you want to take a look at or archive. You can also look at debits or credits only, but it's a good idea to archive this information because this trace number is going to give you the information about that ACH transaction. Okay. Resources and training. We're going to content sensitive help, employment forms, forms and publication, links, and recorded webinars. Okay, so content sensitive help. This is one of my favorite things about Payroll Relief is no matter what screen you are on in Payroll Relief, if you click the question mark up here, you are going to get help specific for that screen that you are on. Under compliance, you have all kinds of tools. It's a very comprehensive set of resources to help you with your payroll service. Here you're looking at the forms and publications under resources, forms and publications. It has all payroll related forms and publications, but there are many other resources under this resource here, okay? So compliance, again, other tools. You have employer forms and employee forms. We have new hire forms, and this includes a link to the actual form for the actual printout form and the online you'll see here. Okay. Announcements. It's always a good idea to check the main page when you're going into Payroll Relief for any kind of announcements. We're constantly making upgrades to the system and compliance, and you want to make sure that you're checking this screen on a regular basis. So in addition to some of the enhancements we made to the e-services tax screen that we discussed at the beginning of the webinar, we also have made some enhancements to the tax forms screen. Okay, so you're going to see here, based on your request, there was a minor change to this screen to let you know which forms will be filed electronically through Payroll Relief. So you're going to see here, you have your little asterisk, and it's going to show you here that which ones are going to be filed electronically through Payroll Relief. So in summarizing, we talked about setup, which is your payments, forms, adding a new state. We talked about e-services, our setup, our process controls, non-sufficient funds, and how to avoid them. We talked about tax payments and some special payment options, tax form filing, e-filing, due and past due forms, training and resources, communication and backup. And today's webinar topics were carefully chosen to enlighten and assist you with headache-free compliance. I'm optimistic that this will be the case going forward, and especially this compliance month. So Registration for payroll relief training webinars are posted in my portal. I want to thank you for joining us today for Payroll Relief Headache-Free Compliance webinar. And Roger, I know, has been manning the chat as we've been going through this. If anybody has any questions, we'll stay on the line.
Very good. Kathy, very good. Yeah, a lot of questions. My fingers have gotten more exercise today, I think, than gotten all last week.
Okay.
So more questions we'll be zipping through. There's some questions that I just want to touch on that were brought up. Nat, thank you so much for the questions on the changes that we made. I can see, wow, they're still coming in, but that's okay. We'll try to get as many as we can.
Okay.
As you know, Kathy covered in the beginning of the webinar the change that was made in the e-services. I have been in communication with the upper management in the company about this particular change that was made. And we looked at it. We made a decision that we wanted to simplify the process and make it as easy as possible with regard to EFT and the FTPS e-filing. So we redesigned that tax page, and what we wanted to do is when you go in there and you see it, all the availability of what we do for e-filing and for paying the taxes, whether it's state EFT or UI, it clearly shows what we do. And if you see yes, then we do it all, right? There are a few states, by the way, that we do ACH debit. Kathy touched on the difference between debit and credit, and those are outlined and noted which one is debit. Before, you didn't know. It wasn't obvious. Maybe you call support. Now you know how we're making that payment, and when a payment is being made via debit, then all we know is that the state is going to go in and debit the employer and pull that money out. We don't have any control. We have no idea if this was an NSF, et cetera. And that's important for you to know. And now we let you know that. The other thing is we wanted to simplify and make the amount of data entry on your part minimal, if at all needed. So when your EFT application has been approved, we are now automatically enabling to allowing you to perform electronic fund transfers for federal and all allowable or applicable state payments. You have the option to turn it off. It is an all or nothing option, and it's an all or nothing option. I mean, if you want us to do the payments for you, we're going to do them all, or we're not. So before, I know you had the option to turn it on or off. For some users, I think they've expressed some concern about that because they wanted to have that flexibility because they have certain unique requirements. And for other users, it made no difference at all. They kind of say, hey, this is fine. It doesn't matter. Again, that will be something that will be continued probably to be looked at. But right now, we're in compliance mode Q2. Don't expect any change on that at all. We also, when you get enabled, we auto e-file all the tax forms. Now, of course, you can turn that on or off. I mean, you have that option. But one of the big things is that screen that shows you the availability of EFT and e-filing for federal and state, and you can see that when you click on it. If you click on requirements, you can also get the form right there accessible to you. If there's a form, there's some states that the form is not required, like California, and there's a couple of others that you're just good to go the way Payroll Relief is set once you submit your 8655 and your ACH application. Other states have a form. And as you probably know, most of the states, we're doing ACH credit, but those few that are ACH debit have the little asterisk on them, so you'll know which one it is. So that is basically in a nutshell what this change was all about. And, you're welcome to post on a forum if you have some concerns about it. And trust me, upper management does read it. We really do care about what you have to say. But right now, we're going to go forward with this for the rest of the quarter. There was another question. I'm trying to think. Well, no, he left the webinar. So let's go back, Kathy, to the last question that I answered,
Okay.
and right, and that's from Natasha Dixon, and
Okay.
she's saying after info is archived, is it still readily available, or is there a restore process? When you say archive, Natasha, I imagine you're saying that it's archived in the cloud cabinet. Um, so yeah, there's certain things that go into the cloud cabinet. All those forms that Kathy mentioned, and there is an automatic archiving that takes place, but you can also go into um, the 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 very last tab where we do all the basically all the batch processing, and you can auto archive any information into that cloud cabinet that's included in Payroll Relief. And as long as you have a subscription to Payroll Relief, you will have that information in the cloud cabinet, even if you terminate the client at any point in time, which you might have to. Okay. Um, the next question, Karen, it would be helpful if we could create a master firm report set and archive the set for selected clients. I don't know, Kathy. I couldn't follow your screen because I was busy typing. But did you show the screen that has the archiving? Is
The
that part of
report sets, the creating the report sets?
No, the one in batch processing. Because
Yes,
no,
I did.
you did. Oh, okay.
No, I did show.
So no, it's not part of it. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I guess if there you do have the opportunity by quarter to select a quarter. You'll have every single client that's listed there that you can archive the forms. You can select them all, and then just put archive and bingo. Every single client you have listed on there will be all their forms will be archived. Everything that you e-file will be archived. So hopefully that addresses your question. If it doesn't, let me know. How can I print a coupon payment for a missed New York State payment from the last quarter? Um, Not sure. You're saying print the coupon payment for a missed. Do you have any insight on that, Kathy? You see that
Well,
question from Chaim?
if the payment was missed, wouldn't they be able to go back into the payment screen and print it from there where
No,
it
but
says the
see,
pending payment?
I think he's saying last quarter. So I have a feeling once you advance to the next quarter, that might not be
Oh,
possible anymore. That's
okay,
my gut feeling on the answer on that.
okay.
Do you have a link to download this webinar? The webinars are posted when you go into Payroll Relief and Resources, you're going to see a slew of webinars. The implementation webinar, which I do on a weekly basis. So if you have any new users that come on board, they should take advantage of that because I really cover all the baby steps to get you guys rolling. And then there's other webinars that Carlos does that are more advanced topics like this one, and then you can use those to provide more information and bring you more up to date on um, what what Payroll Relief can do. So all the webinars that are resources, and the tab is called webinars. And I will be rendering this later. The audio came out perfect, and I'll be uploading that, and you'll probably see it tomorrow. So there's your answer, Julie. Can we have payroll reports emailed to more than one email address? No, Melissa. No. Right now, there's only one email. I guess you're talking about for internally, right, for your firm. Currently, that is not possible. Um, you could make a suggestion. I would say make a suggestion because there is a tab when you go into help, and you can make a suggestion on that and see how the development team looks at that and see if that's a possibility to address that. Well, Kathy, call Deborah. So Kathy, Deborah Thompson wants you to call her. Do you know who she is?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Nathaniel, is there any way we can be able to record any tax payments that is still pending? Right now, we can't record unemployment taxes that show as pending. Um, record right now we can't. You can't record something that's pending. You mean pending? You mean pending because it is in the process of being processed? Is that what you mean? I'm not really sure what on that. When you use the canned emails to multiple clients, does their email show up or hide the client email addresses in a blind carbon copy? Also, you can select multiple clients. File reports. I'm assuming the only attachment each client sees is their own. Yes, that's correct. In other words, if you're using the batch, it is not. That's the beauty of it. The batch processing that we do for the email, that makes it appear to the client that you're sending them that personalized email just to them, and they're the only ones that get it. So no, it's not a batch distribution like other programs have. It's pretty cool how it works. Pretty impressive. Batch processing is only payroll forms, not the reports. Batch processing is only payroll forms. Not exactly per se. I mean, you could build a report set uh, and send it to a client. But I think you're saying like if you have all these reports, how can you? Is there a batch? Okay, is there a batch processing for the reports? Right. The only batch processing currently would be um, archiving the forms, the auto e-file. Um, but no, when you run, I guess when those. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I take it back. When you print the checks in batch processing, there's a little box, okay, that you can check or uncheck. And if you check that box when you print the checks, then those for all those employers that you ran the payroll for, all the forms actually get emailed out to them. Okay, so there is a batch process for that, Karen. Um, Confusion batch processing the payroll forms with creating a payroll report set. Kathy even mentioned that when you create a payroll set, that you would want to be consistent across your clients. Therefore, it would be helpful to add this as an archiving option. Okay, so if I guess if that's the case, then I would suggest Karen putting a suggestion in the forum. Um, you going into help and putting a suggestion in there and maybe post it in forum. I think that would be a good idea. What are the pros and cons of archiving? Pros and cons of archiving. Well, I don't think there's any cons. I think they're all pros. The ability to archive the information, you should know you should have multiple backups. So you have one in Payroll Relief that's in there for a certain number of years, typically two, maybe three. When you put it in the cloud cabinet, we maintain that. We redundantly back it up. It's secure, and it stays there as long as you have the cloud cabinet with Payroll Relief. You can also download it to your PC or your server and store it there. The most secure way, as you probably well know, for maintaining backups is to have at least two copies of a backup, maybe even three. Professionals suggest having up to three. So it's only pros. There are no cons as far as the backups are concerned. How do you select vendor payments? Vendor payments. I trust. Are you talking about contractors, 1099s, or are you talking about mm, like payees? Melissa, maybe you can elaborate on that. Due date shows 7/31 and record payment only is grayed out. due date shows, Nathaniel, I guess this is for the issue that you're encountering with your state. So the due date shows is 7/31, but the record payment only is grayed out. Well, the record payment is grayed out. Typically, it's because I have a feeling this might be a UI form. So you really have to file the form first, and then you can go in and make the payment. So that on the payment side, that the ability to record the payment will be grayed out until that form is filed. I think you might know that, no? Michigan info, payroll relief to go in on the 5080 form. I'm a little lost on that one. Melissa, do you have any idea what she might mean, Kathy? Kathy? Hello? I can't hear you, Kathy. Okay, I guess I was left alone. Okay, you had to turn off Michigan because of sales tax. Was told to record the withholding return and turn the Michigan requirements back on so that the UI will be e-filed. Yeah, I would say, Carol, that'd be best to touch with, base with support on that question. Hillary, when will the update be done for the issues with the GL? I trust that they have been keeping in touch with you on that. I will look into that again. Hopefully, they will advise you on that, right? Nat, maybe just give me a call. Sure, absolutely. I always love chatting with you. Not a problem. Are you planning on having us change over clients where we are the reporting agent instead of AW? Jennifer, currently no. I mean, we feel that if you were the reporting agent, since in reality we're not, that would be best for you. IRS would communicate directly with you. They are your clients, therefore you probably want to take a vested interest in that, right? But no, I mean, if you did this, if we were the reporting agent, if AW was the reporting agent prior to, I think we implemented that in June of last year, right? June or July. Then we're still a reporting agent. That's fine. We didn't want to, create extra work for you, but it wouldn't be a bad idea if you want to have more control over that. Why do I have to file the form first? I imagine you're talking about. Oh, I don't know. It's always been like that, Nathan. You had to file the form, and I've noticed that on my screen many times. You file the form first, and then once the form is filed, then that payment, if you're doing that manually, that payment can go out. That's the way that's done. You can't do the payment first. Do that, and you'll notice that once you file the form, and you read what the pop-up says, and when you go back to the pending payment, that you will be able to make that pending payment. Is there a way to get a detailed report allocated by department? There should be a report in Payroll Relief. I think in management reports, allocation by department after you allocate the department, so you should be able to see that. So you should provide a detailed report by department, and you have each employee listed in the department. Is AccountantsWorld ever going to offer HR and or income tax application? Okay. We're definitely not touching income tax at all. I can tell you that now. So that's not going to happen, Sean. or Kayam, I'm sorry. Oh no, it is Sean. Um, HR, yes, we're looking into that. I think we're very, very close to having one, possibly two HR options available to you guys. And when we're ready and the time is right, we will announce that in the announcements. But the good news is that we are looking into it, and that's a great feature that we will definitely want to add to Payroll Relief. The allocated report only has one amount for all taxes not divided individually. When you go into the GL and you select the box in the lower left-hand corner of the GL screen, I think it breaks it out by department. If you have the department, and then you can see a breakout by department of all the they are lump sums, right? But you can see it broken out by department, all the taxes, et cetera, that are being allocated to the various folders. Thank you, Sean. I love the enthusiasm. Yes, that I agree. That would be great. That would be great. Yeah, Nathaniel, I don't know. That sounds odd. So you're saying that once you e-file the unemployment report, or not report, but you mean form, the pending payment disappeared. That's strange. Very strange. Um, I trust you made support aware of that. Um, Yeah, Karen, I hear your question about the detailed contract subcontractor report. Yeah, if probably something is a limitation in the program, and I guess the best thing is to definitely put it in the forum and bring that up. It doesn't hurt to mention it to support, but I can tell you it carries a lot more weight when you put it in the forum, because every single request that you put in the forum, or you make a request for in Payroll Relief as a requested enhancement, although we might not comment back to you immediately or at all, to be honest with you, that does not mean that we didn't read it. That doesn't mean that we don't think it's important. And many times, things that are posted in there months later, we implement. We sometimes need to get more input. Sometimes we have to wait for the right time to add a change. There's a lot of factors that come into play when we evaluate an enhancement that needs to be added to the program, and hence, you know, some may not make it to the table at all. Sometimes it's an enhancement that might be number 2 today, and then it gets moved down back to number 4 because something else more important got pushed up. So it's a constantly ball juggling from a development standpoint to get enhancements into the program and to please all our users. Will AW make setup of new clients a simpler process? And why can't quarterly reports be done sooner than the 20th of the month they are due? Well, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was pretty easy to set up clients in Payroll Relief. I mean, you have the option to, first of all, upload clients. You can upload in mass. I covered that in my implementation webinar. Setting up the client, the only hard part of anything is actually doing the setting up the employer, which has to be done manually, but it's a pretty quick process if you know the program well. And then there are Excel spreadsheets, both for prior payrolls and for the employee setup, and that allows you to upload large employers and a lot of data using there's a customized Excel that we generate to bring in the employees. Not when you go into import under employees, and that really helps you bring an employer up to life quicker than normal if if there's a lot of employees. So I don't know about that. The other thing is, why can't quarterly reports be done sooner than the 20th of the month they're due? I'm not sure, Ida, what you mean by that. I mean, payments have to be obvious. Well, I think one problem with that would be that certain times payments have to be made, right? And payments are usually typically most people are on a monthly tax deposit frequency, so the payment has to be made first, and then you can e-file the form. Uh, that I would say probably typically why that might be happening is the only thing I can think of. Okay, Nathaniel, that's good to hear. I'm I'm glad that went through fine. Um, do you have to reuse prior filed form? Do you have to re? Do we have to revise? No, we have the form perfectly filled out for you. You don't have to touch it. If you enter the employer correctly, all you got to do is print it, have the employer sign it, upload to us, and we will send it to IRS. We've tried to make that process as simple as possible, Scott. So you shouldn't have to do anything. You're welcome, Nat, and I will call you. Probably not today, but tomorrow. That will be okay. Uh, with regard to the accountant and the reporting agent, uh, Scott, give me a little more info what you mean about that, so I can understand what you mean. Um, yeah, so you're saying the due date item, the due date's on the 15th, and you can't e-file the form until the 20th? I mean, we start the auto e-file process typically on the 15th, I think sometimes on the 16th of the month. And then we basically, if we're doing the auto e-file, we want to make the payments first, get those out of the way to bring those forms down to zero, and then probably it's going to take about 4 days to make sure that there were no NSFs or anything, and then the auto e-file process will begin for the forms. But if you're using auto e-file, that should not be a problem. I mean, they'll just auto e-file automatically. Just make sure you follow the managed compliance screens to make sure there are no errors in there. Okay, Scott, but you're saying the 8655. What do you mean by that? Give me a little more info. Oh, that well, are you telling me that the 8655 that Payroll Relief is generating is reflecting that Accountants World is the reporting agent? We are the third party. We are the third party processor that uploads that form to IRS. But if you're the reporting agent already, or if you're the reporting agent now, because you don't have a choice in the matter. Now you have to be the reporting agent. Then your name will be listed there because that's the information that's being sent to IRS. That's how they know that you're the reporting agent, and they get back to you, not us. However, any forms you filed before, if you've been using Payroll Relief for a while, and we were the reporting agent, it's okay that we were the reporting agent. That's not a problem. It could stay that way. But if you want to change it to yourself, you can upload another 8655, and then we'll be removed as a reporting agent, and you'll become the reporting agent. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, so the clients that are in the system for a long time, we're the reporting agent. That's fine. That doesn't have any impact on it. Just leave it as it is. Sometimes what they say, don't if the shoe fits, leave it, or if it ain't fixed, don't. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Right. So that's the best advice I can give you. Cool. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. I'm going to close down the webinar. You guys have been great, great questions. Um, we'll look through to see if there's anything that got missed and try to get back to you directly. Kathy and I want to thank you for taking out time today to attend the webinar. I hope it's been helpful and educational process. We really try to do our best in the absence of Carlos, who is the program manager for Payroll Relief. He's on vacation in Colombia, having a great time, and with his family, something that got planned for several years. And he will be back on Monday, and I'm sure he will be happy to come back to work and begin digging into his emails. On behalf of Kathy and myself, thank you so much for attending. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.